On a quiet night in Washington, D.C., the nation's capital glows under a pale orange sky. The mood is tense, uncertain. Across social media and news outlets, one phrase keeps echoing: the Insurrection Act. Millions are asking the same question. What is it? And can a president really send troops into American cities? To understand that, we need to go back in time. The Insurrection Act is not new. It's a centuries-old law passed in 1807, giving U.S. presidents the power to deploy federal troops inside the country under very specific conditions, mainly to restore order during riots, rebellion, or when local authorities can't maintain peace. It's been used sparingly throughout history in moments of national tension, during the civil rights era in the 1960s, when federal troops were sent to enforce school integration, and after natural disasters or riots when state governments requested help. But it has always been a controversial tool because it blurs the line between civilian policing and military power. Now, in 2025, this old law has returned to the spotlight. Former President Donald Trump has mentioned the Insurrection Act multiple times, suggesting it could be used to address violent crime, unrest, or border-related chaos in certain U.S. cities. Supporters see this as a strong response to lawlessness. Critics warn it could overstep boundaries meant to protect states' rights. But the key question remains: can it actually happen, and what are the legal limits? Under the U.S. Constitution, state governments have primary authority over policing. The federal government can assist, but only when local leaders request help or when specific conditions are met. The Insurrection Act allows federal troops to be used domestically only if there's an open rebellion, or if state authorities can't or won't protect constitutional rights. Even then, it must follow legal procedure. The president must first issue a formal proclamation urging people to disperse before troops are deployed. Without that, it could be challenged in court. So, could a president send troops without a governor's approval? Technically, yes, but only under extraordinary circumstances, such as an insurrection or a direct threat to the nation's stability. Historically, that threshold has been very high. Presidents from Eisenhower to George H.W. Bush used the act with caution, and only when absolutely necessary. Each time, it sparked debate about the balance between public safety and civil liberties. In today's climate, that debate feels more intense than ever. America is deeply divided politically, and even a hint of military involvement in domestic affairs draws strong reactions. When Trump references the Insurrection Act, it ignites immediate discussion, not because it's illegal, but because it's rare, powerful, and symbolically charged. Many Americans hear the term and think of martial law, but legally they're not the same. Martial law suspends normal civilian authority entirely. The Insurrection Act, in contrast, operates under the rule of law. It doesn't remove the Constitution. It enforces it in moments of crisis. Still, the power to deploy troops at home raises big questions. Who decides when a situation is serious enough? Who ensures that force isn't misused? That's why Congress, governors, and courts all play roles in checking this authority. In modern America, any move to invoke the Insurrection Act would be met with legal scrutiny, media attention, and likely court challenges. It is not a switch that can be flipped easily. It is a process that demands justification, documentation, and oversight. Let's look at history for perspective. In 1992, during the Los Angeles riots, President George H.W. Bush invoked the Insurrection Act after the California governor formally requested federal help. The goal was to restore peace and protect lives after local forces were overwhelmed. It worked. But even then, critics worried it set a precedent for federal intervention in local matters. Decades earlier, Presidents Eisenhower and Kennedy used the act to protect civil rights and enforce desegregation when local authorities resisted court orders. Those moments showed that the act can serve justice when used responsibly, but also that it must be handled with extreme care. Today's discussions about the Insurrection Act reflect both fear and fascination. Fear, because people worry about what it might mean if the military were seen in city streets again. Fascination, because it represents one of the strongest emergency powers a president holds, a reminder of how fragile and powerful democracy can be. Every generation faces a version of this tension. How far should government go to maintain order? And at what point does protection become control? Legal experts agree on one thing. The Insurrection Act is not meant for routine use. It's a last resort. Most situations can and should be handled by local or state law enforcement or through the National Guard under state command. Deploying active duty military inside U.S. borders would be seen as extraordinary and would require a clear national emergency or a complete breakdown of local control. Even then, Congress and courts could step in quickly if the justification seemed weak. Public opinion also plays a powerful role. In recent polls, a majority of Americans, across political lines, say they prefer local and state control over federal military involvement in domestic affairs. That sentiment is part of what keeps the Insurrection Act from being invoked often. In a democracy, public trust is as important as legal authority. Any decision to use such power must balance the need for safety with respect for freedom. And in America, that balance is always under debate. So, when you hear news or rumors about troops being deployed in cities, it's important to understand the difference between possibility and probability. The Insurrection Act allows for it under strict conditions, but invoking it without cause would trigger immediate legal and political resistance. The system is built to question, to check, and to balance power. That's the essence of democracy. At its core, this discussion isn't just about Trump or any single politician. It's about how America handles crisis and control. Laws like the Insurrection Act are reminders of the fine line between order and overreach. They're tools created for emergency use, but their power demands responsibility and transparency. Whether it is used again in our lifetime depends not just on politics, but on how Americans respond to division, unrest, and uncertainty. In the end, the Insurrection Act isn't a story of fear. It's a story of restraint. It's about how far the government can go and how far it should go. And while the headlines may sound dramatic, the reality is rooted in law, oversight, and the enduring idea that even in moments of chaos, the Constitution still holds. Because no matter who sits in the Oval Office, the principles of democracy are designed to outlast any single administration, and that's what truly keeps the nation standing strong.